thank you for the team that you've put around them. God, I just pray for everybody that walks in those doors today that they would just be blown away by the Spirit of God in that place. God, there'd be people that just find a new home in that place, in that church. And God, we're not talking about just people migrating over from other churches. God, we're talking about fresh people who have no idea who you are. People who have never experienced your goodness, the goodness of a good Father like we just sang about. The people who have never experienced the power and just the refreshing of your Holy Spirit. God, that would be so evident in that place, in Citizens Church, moving forward. God, would this be just an incredible launch Sunday for Citizens? God, we stand with them. We just believe for great things to come out of there. God, would you strengthen Jason? Would you strengthen Kelsey? Would you guard their family? And bless that church. In Jesus' name, everybody said, amen, amen. Hey, why don't you say hello, high five, side hug, whatever you want to do to the person next to you or around you, and then go find your seat. All right. Well, that was a pretty quick settle down, everybody. Everybody's in their seats. Everybody's quietly anticipating what's next. I feel like I should do like a magic trick or something because everybody's just like locked in today. This is awesome. Welcome to Northgate, everyone. If this is your first time or this is your 1,000th time, we just welcome you all the same and hope that you've already encountered Jesus in this place with us this morning. There's more to come, and we're excited. We got a couple of things going on this morning, but what we want to do right now is something that we do every week without fail, and it's called taking up an offering. Yeah. So if you are new with us this morning, this is one of those things where like you should feel no pressure to give in this moment. This is something that we believe as followers of Jesus. This is just something we do. It really is. It's a reminder of where our source comes from, but it's also just an act of worship in and of itself. Just because the band takes off and leaves the stage doesn't mean worship is finished. Our giving, man, that's actually probably a bigger act of worship than us, singing and lifting our hands, because that's heart stuff. That's like us reminding ourselves, God is my provider, and I'm choosing to trust as I give. I'm choosing to invest in His kingdom. So as the ushers come forward, we're just going to pray over that, and God loves a cheerful giver, so let's keep that in mind. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for your provision in our lives. God, we're so grateful to live where we live in the world, to live where we live in Canada, to live where we live in BC, God. This is a beautiful place, and we know that you're doing something here too. This is just an incredible season that we are in to be in the Comox Valley. So God, we just want to invest in what you're doing in your kingdom. God, would you remind our hearts and in our minds just of how good you've been to us. And God, would we give out of a thankful, cheerful heart this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. So the ushers are going to hand out those bags, and then we got some announcements for you on the screens.
Good morning and welcome to church. We're so glad you're here with us this morning. If you're new with us and want to get connected here in the Life at Northgate, head to our info desk after this service. Our volunteers would love to meet you and help get you connected. Or you can fill out one of the Connect cards. It's in the seat in front of you, and we'll contact you during the week. We have baby dedications coming up Sunday, September 23rd. So if you're interested in having your child dedicated, contact Pastor Joelle for more details or to sign up. Youth is back every Wednesday night from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So if you're in grades 6 through 12, make sure you join us here at the church. Fall Carnival is just around the corner, October 31st. Mark your calendars because you're going to want to invite your friends and your family. We have started the candy count. We are in need of 12,000 pieces of individually wrapped candy. So if you want to bring any donations into the church office during the week, we would love that. Or you can do a cash donation and we'll do the shopping for you. We're also looking for volunteers, so if you'd like to volunteer, go to thisweek.ngate.ca to sign up. Those are all the announcements I have for you today. If you missed any details, head to thisweek.ngate.ca and all the information is there. Have a great day in church.
Okay, we're here. Good to see you all. My name's Evan. Say hi, Evan. I'm the lead pastor here. I'm so glad you're here today. It's good to be in church together. I don't know about you, but I feel like there's some life in church when we show up. You know, when we come together, and there's a little bit of there's some camaraderie, there's some friendship, some family. But I know some of you are brand new here too. And so welcome to the new folks who feel maybe like they don't know the friends and the family yet, or they're feeling like they're not quite sure if they fit in yet. We want you to know there is space for you. There's a spot for you to land. We'd love to get you connected, love to help you be on team and get in small groups and get to know some friends around, and we'd love to have you here. But yeah, I'm the lead pastor here, and we just love doing Northgate. We love worshiping Jesus. We love taking part in this community and just believing for something special here. It's really good. And did anyone notice how white the announcement lady's teeth looked today? Anyone? No? It just keeps replaying in my mind. I can't stop. I can't kick it. What nice teeth she has. Woo! That's my wife, and I love her. She's special. She's amazing. Anyways, we're carrying on a series that we just started last week. Last week was the very first week that we had 3 services at Northgate. Is that exciting? Come on. That was awesome. Was anyone at the 3rd service last week? Okay. If you were, you didn't like it, so don't hear you. Did anyone like being at the 3rd service last week? All right. So, oh yeah, I did. I loved it. It was awesome. We had fun. Last week we had a lot of people in church. We saw a lot of new people come out to church and want to take part in what's going on. We started recognizing that as we had a 3rd service, that we weren't just 2 as company anymore. We were 3 as a crowd all of a sudden. And we realized that there's something kind of going on here. There's a crowd developing here. There's a movement sort of happening, and it's not a movement that we're starting. The movement of Jesus and the Christian movement started thousands of years ago, but the movement that had started thousands of years ago seems to be finding some life right here, right now. And we seem to be experiencing something exciting right now where we're not just a couple people meeting together. We're not just 1 or 2. It's not just, a small group of people meeting in a home, but something is happening, drawing a crowd together that's looking, like we talked about last week, looking to Jesus and just saying, well, something is coming, something is happening, something is moving, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I want to see it, and I want to be part of it. And I want to be engaged in it. And maybe today you're here and you're like, I just want to be in the crowd. I want to be part of this crowd. This crowd is exciting. It's fun to consider that last week we almost had 700 people in church. That's a lot of people in church, you know. We had a lot of people showing up, and just to consider what that starts to feel like for us. That's fun to be a part of. You feel like there's not that many things in the Comox Valley that would draw 700 people in a year. There's not that many things that many people would be drawn out to, and then we're saying, well, on a weekly basis, could we see that many people start showing up and just saying, I want to be in the crowd that is looking to see what might happen when Jesus starts moving in the Comox Valley? What could it look like? And so we're a crowd. We've become a crowd. But in Matthew 4, last week we talked about how Jesus showed up. John the Baptist had been developing a crowd on his own, and it was clearly an act of God because he wasn't really, naturally a natural fit for drawing a crowd. But as he's calling people, there's all of a sudden this crowd. Jesus comes and gets baptized in the midst of that crowd, and all the crowd saw heaven open up, and God speak over him, saying, this is my son, whom I am well pleased, with whom I am well pleased. And so that all happened with the crowd. We talked about that last week, but then right after that, what happens is Jesus goes off into the wilderness. He goes to be on his own. And while he's on his own, he's tempted by the enemy. He's tempted by Satan. And there's these things that Satan keeps putting in front of him. And Jesus keeps overcoming what Satan is saying to him with Scripture. And he's batting things around, batting back at him. But Jesus is on his own, standing by himself without a crowd before Satan. And it says he overcame Satan, and Satan fled from him. Satan left all of a sudden. And there was Jesus standing, just finished being baptized, and then having heaven speak over him and open up above him, having a crowd see him, and then heading off into seclusion and beating Satan. And then what does he do? There's where he's standing, saying, it's time to start some ministry. It's time for me to get going and get doing some stuff. I'm called to change some things now. I'm here to make a difference now. I'm here to help people recognize that they can have relationship with God again. I'm here to do that. And so he's about to head out. And at the end of chapter 4 of Matthew, the crowd starts to develop around him. But in the middle of chapter 4 of Matthew, right before the crowd start to develop, Jesus does something else. Here it is in Matthew 4:18 to 22. It says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. So the crowd is about to develop around Jesus. The very next chunk of Scripture says people brought their friends from all over the land who were sick. Jesus healed them, and a crowd came from all over the land, all over the place. They started following him. But Jesus recognized something before the crowd started to develop. Before the crowd was all of a sudden swarming and going crazy, before that moment, Jesus recognized that there's something he needed to do ahead of time. Before the masses were around him, he said, I need to first start grabbing my few people. I need to start getting my disciples. I need to start getting the ones who are going to stand with me through this process. I'm going to be on this earth for a few years, and I'm going to be doing ministry. I want some people who are going to be with me, understanding it with me, learning it with me, growing together. I want to walk in relationship with them. I want them to experience what I'm experiencing. I want them to feel what I'm feeling. I want them to know what I'm knowing. And so at the end of this, they are going to carry it where the crowd will not carry it. He starts getting his disciples. See, the crowd was not going to give people enough faith to carry this movement once Jesus died. Crowds are fickle. Did you know that? Though we're a crowd, crowds are fickle. Though it's exciting to see right now, when something happens and a crowd comes together, something is worth looking at when a crowd is gathered. Something is worth staring at. Something is worth seeing when a crowd comes together. If this many people get together in one room every single Sunday, there must be something worth being a part of. And I want to see it, and I want to know it. I want to see what's going to happen and what could take place. But at any point, it could all shift, and the crowd says, never mind. I'm not that interested. It's happened throughout history all the time. You see it happen at a concert or a hockey game or all that. Boom, crowd comes together, crowd leaves. Crowd comes together, crowd leaves. Or the hockey team's doing really well and they're all there. The hockey team's not doing well and they're all there. Or the preacher's doing really well and everyone's around. Or the preacher's not doing really well and everyone leaves. Preacher gets a bad haircut. Doesn't happen to me, but. And everyone said, "Oh, I'm out of here. I don't like this haircut anymore." Crowds are fickle. And if we don't want our faith to be fickle, we can't put our faith only with the crowd. We can't stand in the crowd and allow ourselves to only be there, and then that should be enough for me to carry on my faith. Coming to church and being part of the crowd will not sustain your faith when things push up against you. It won't be enough. And Jesus knew that. Jesus knew that he had to put these guys in relationship with one another, that they should have one another and stand with each other, that there needed to be something about them, that they'd separate from the crowd for minutes and times and experiences and moments with him to recalibrate and remind themselves of who they are, and remind themselves of who he is, and grow together as a team, because when Jesus was gone and the crowd was gone, these guys were going to be the ones who were going to build the church. Jesus is going to build the church, but these are the guys he's using. I remember when I first got kind of called out of the crowd. When I grew up as a kid who went to church most Sundays, and I sat in the literal back seat with my mom every week. And that back seat meant we'd go in the back doors to the auditorium, and then we'd turn, and then we'd go backwards to the back seat and then sit there. That's where we sat. Didn't want to be too close to the front. Didn't want anyone to see us, I guess. Didn't want to really be noticed. We were just gonna be part of the crowd. We were happy being part of the crowd. We were happy sort of sitting there and just taking it in as it came, and that was fine. And then there was this one guy. I've talked about him a few times. He made a big impact on me when I was a young guy, grade 6, 7, and 8. And he was big. He's 6'6", and also just big. He's just a big guy, but he just loved Jesus. And so I was one of the crowd sitting in the back seat, and he was definitely not the crowd. He's the dancer, I don't know. We have a couple of dancers in our church, but this guy was something else. I mean, you imagine the wingspan on 6'6", right? Like that wingspan was moving. It wasn't this kind of moves that he'd do. I mean, he had some of these I don't know if it was that graceful like that, but he'd be doing one. I don't know if this is a move or something. I don't know. There's lots of movement going on there anyways. Lots happening. And you'd come in, and he was sort of just a spectacle to come in. This is part of being the crowd, is watching him as well as the preacher and trying to look to Jesus while watching him. And, and he's moving and doing his thing and all this stuff. But something happened in him that he started recognizing something in me when I was a young guy. And he's part of my story as far as how I started investing myself in ministry and doing a bunch of things and trying out ministry and just trying out being in the church and trying out leadership. He was part of that story for me. But a lot of it, the first kind of part was him. He had started talking to me. He started talking to me about Jesus. He had started talking to me about, he was my Sunday school teacher, and we talked about the Bible a bit. And there was something starting to build in me, but I was still the crowd. I'm still just watching and seeing what happens. And he was still the dancer. But there's this one Sunday I remember, and I started looking up to him because he had called me out on a few things. I remember him praying for me actually one time. He's actually praying for a group of us, but I so specifically remember this. You remember this type of thing. He said, "God, I just thank you for all of these young people. I just really believe that you're going to do something great in their lives, especially Evans." And I'm like, "Don't say that. There's all these other people around." He says, "Especially Evans, because I've seen him when I've been playing video games with him and his brother." And I'm like, "Are you allowed to talk about video games in prayer?" I don't know. That doesn't really line up, not sure. But anyways, he says, there's something in him and I've recognized it. And I started kind of feeling it a little bit. I started feeling myself separated just from the crowd, like yes, crowd, but something else was happening in me. But then there was the Sunday that all of a sudden he called me out and worship is going on and I'm sitting back row with my mom and not really paying attention to too much, sort of watching his dance moves and making sure no one gets hurt over there. And then all of a sudden he goes, Evan. And I'm like, it's like, Evan. No. I kind of knew what was coming. I kind of knew what was coming. He's like, Evan, you got to come dance with me. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. That doesn't sound fun. I already make fun of you, and now I'm going to be made fun of too. And it's just going to be awkward. And he goes, come on. And then he just reaches I didn't know his arms could reach that far. I'm like in the middle of the pews, like, grabs me. He pulls me out. All of a sudden, I'm in the aisle. And he's like, hey, and he's looking me in the eyes like, we're doing this together, yeah. And he's dancing, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to, I did not do much, I wasn't doing the moves. I definitely wasn't copying him, that's for sure. Someone would get hurt if I had. But I'm just sort of like doing some moves with him or whatever and not really getting into it. And the song finishes and he says, you've got a passion for Jesus. Oh, good on you, man. And just sends me back in. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, oh, what just happened to me? What just changed in me? And everyone else looking on would have thought, that kid thinks this is dumb. He's never going to be changed in his life. Nothing's ever going to happen. What did that guy just do to him? But in my heart, it started bursting in me. Like something started happening. Someone started recognizing me, and now we weren't just individual Christians in a crowd that weren't really known to one another or anyone else, and we're just kind of looking to Jesus on our own and doing our thing. Now he had sort of put an accountability into me. Like, are you going to pursue that passion for Jesus? I see it rising up. Are you going to take it? Are you going to move with it? Are you going to do anything with that? And so every time I saw him from that point on, I felt like I needed to raise up my faith. I needed to elevate. I needed him to see me like dancing on the streets or something. I felt like there was just something in me that wanted to grow because someone, now it wasn't just me in a crowd and Jesus and just, I'm accountable to Jesus who I don't actually hear all that much, and if I don't read my Bible, I don't even feel convicted in my heart at all. So I'm accountable to him, but I'm in a crowd. No, now I wasn't just in a crowd. I was with him. I was with someone else. I was being called out when I was dropping the ball. I was being called up when I wasn't living the life that I should be living. I was being encouraged when I felt like I couldn't hear the voice of God anymore. I was being pushed where I didn't know I could be pushed. All of a sudden, something was changing in me because of relationship. See, crowds, you can't have relationship in crowds. Sometimes we think, I'm so happy in the crowd, and part of it is because we don't have to have relationship. Think this is so easy to show up to church and then leave. That's awesome. This is just about me and God. Don't worry. It's me, God. That's all. I'll be with Jesus, and then I'll go home, and then I probably won't be with Jesus again until next week, and then I'll be back in the crowd. Then no one's going to ask me questions, and no one's going to wonder. Some people actually like being part of a larger church because they're never noticed. They're never seen, and we kind of like the idea of us just taking the back seat, and no one ever has to ask me about my faith, and I'll just sit in it, and I won't worry about that. And Jesus, right off the bat, before the crowds even showed up, said, that's not going to be enough to sustain the faith that I need to build this church on. He said, I can't do it on a crowd and a bunch of people who are anonymously sort of pursuing me and would just as easily betray me if something goes wrong. I need to build this thing with people who are saying I'm accountable not just to God, who I can ignore, but my friend who now knows me, but this person who's right beside me. And so Jesus starts calling up. He said, Peter, James, John, Andrew, and he calls 8 other guys, says, you guys are going to be with me and you're going to be with each other. This isn't just going to be a crowd thing. When the crowd leaves, you're going to be here. When the crowd deserts me, you're going to be here. When everyone turns away, you're going to be here. And you're going to be trying to put your fingers in your ear and saying you don't believe, you don't hear me anymore, you don't know what you're supposed to do. But Peter, when you try that, Andrew's going to say, no, you do know what you're supposed to do. You do know who you are. You do know the way you're supposed to live. And Thomas is going to start calling out Bartholomew, and James is going to start calling out John and saying, no, we were there together. We weren't just part of the crowd. We were together. Jesus started developing a small group. He started creating a group of people that were going to hold each other accountable. And he was going to give them experiences that they'd never had. He was going to let them be part of something they'd never been a part of. When you look at the internship in our church, who are together like 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week, there's no group in this church that's more accountable to one another than that. And they just stand with each other, honest with each other, and instantly you start seeing walls come down and things start breaking off and people start rising up in that. People start developing into who they're meant to become. Some of us think, well, that's just not for me. I don't think we actually know what faith is going to look like in our lives until we're in a small group. You think, well, faith is just me being in the crowd. It's not. There's something more for you here. Northgate was never built with the idea that you could just come to a Sunday and then you've got enough for your faith. But church is supposed to be community. It's supposed to be life together. It's supposed to be accountability. It's supposed to be growing with one another. It's supposed to be asking each other the hard questions and sharing with each other the hard things about what we're dealing with, and then praying for each other and believing for the grace of Jesus to meet us and empower us to live in a new way. And you cannot do that on a Sunday. So if you're here today and say, I come on Sunday and I'm just not sure I have the friendship and the relationships that I'm supposed to have, and I just wish there was a bit more people caring for me and doing that, I'm telling you the truth. We never, ever planned for Sunday to do that for you. We planned for small groups to do that for you, because you can't do that with 700 people on a Sunday. And so today's small group Sunday. You just thought the balloons were there for who knows what in the lobby. If there's balloons, by the way, we like to celebrate a small thing. It might not be a big thing, but there's something going on if there's balloons, okay, in the lobby. The crowd's a great place to come to be impressed, but life change happens when you start to invest. The Lord. The crowd's a great place to come be impressed, but life change happens when you start to invest. See, the crowd with Jesus, they were all impressed. Wow. He's healing everyone. He's walking on water. He's feeding them a beautiful lunch out of not very much food. Look at what he's doing. Look at all the stuff he's accomplishing. It's amazing to see what's happening. Wow, we love it. It's so incredible. Wow, let's see Jesus do this. Jesus, what did you? And there's going to be times along the way when Jesus says, actually, by the way, I don't want this to be easy. And so he's going to have a few things that actually pushes people away. And then the crowd's kind of dispersed, but who's left is his small group. There's one point that we may get to where Jesus actually says this one topic and the whole crowd leaves. And Jesus looks to his disciples and says, what about you guys? Are you going to leave too? And Peter says, to whom else would we go? Who else has the words of life like you have? They've learned it. Something's happened. Something's taken place in the small group. They've learned something that the crowd couldn't learn through relationships. There's some things that you can't learn here as a crowd. We'll talk about how Jesus taught the crowd, but there's some things that you can't learn. And so Jesus had the crowd, but then he also had his 12 disciples, and then he also had, out of those 12 disciples, 3 that were like his favorites. You think Jesus isn't allowed to pick favorites. He gets to do whatever he wants. He's Jesus. So he picked favorites. And he took them on 3 accounts, Peter, James, and John. On 3 accounts, he had them with him when he had no one else with him. I want to tell you those 3 accounts. First one is when they're in the crowd, there's this guy that comes running up to them. His name's Jairus, and he's the head of a synagogue. He comes running up, says, hey, Jesus, my daughter, she's sick. She's dead, but I know that you've got power. Can you come and help us? And here's that story, Matthew 9:18-19, and then 23-26. While he was saying this, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him and said, my daughter has just died, But come and put your hand on her, and she will live. What faith. Jesus got up and went with him, and so did his disciples. When Jesus entered the synagogue leader's house and saw the noisy crowd and people playing pipes, he said, go away. The girl is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. I love this. After the crowd had been put outside. What do you think that meant? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. The crowd had been put outside. They said first they were nicely requested that they'd go outside. Go away. That's how Jesus did it. And then it says they were put outside. I don't know. I don't know what happened. They were put outside. He went in. And Luke 8:51 actually says it this way. It says, when he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. It's like, oh, no one believes here. No one has faith here. Everyone's laughing about this. This is going to be a big moment. This is going to be a significant time in my journey. I need some people to taste this with me. I need some people to share this story with me. Sometimes I think Jesus probably just wanted to bat this around with someone after. Like, wasn't that awesome? Oh, it's so cool. When people get, they're dead and then they're alive. Isn't that fun? I think Jesus probably wanted some people like that once in a while. And so he's like, okay, everyone doesn't believe. They're all laughing at me and playing their pipes and blah, blah, blah. Get out, bing, bang, boom. And away they go. And they say, Peter, James, John, you other 9 disciples, you're great, but these are my favorites. Let's go in. He brings them in. He says, later on, when church is hard, when it's difficult, when it's not going to be as easy, you're going to need this moment, so I'm giving it to you. And you're going to need to remind each other of it. It says he went in, took the girl by the hand, and she got up. I just sure love that. It says, see Peter, James, and John. Thank you, girl. Go ahead. You can go leave and see your parents. See Peter, James, and John. Maybe you're sitting in a crowd with a whole bunch of doubters in the future. This is going to be the time where you remember, but God can still move. Come on, let's keep that in mind. They're like taking notes. I don't know what they'd be doing in that moment. But down the road, they're going to be part of building the church. And they're going to need that moment. Later on, Matthew 17, 1-2 and 5 says, after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. A bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, this is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. We're probably going to get to another story that happens right after this later on when we're talking about the crowd. But right after this, they're coming down the mountainside, and they're just batting around, just chatting about, I just picture them just talking about, what in the world was that? What happened? Our friend Jesus just went on a mountain and his face got bright, and then heaven spoke to us and told us about this guy. See, Jesus wanted them to experience that together. He wanted them to be part of that. See, it's interesting because almost the exact same thing happened last week in front of a crowd. And that whole crowd we talked about at baptism, Jesus got baptized, heaven spoke again, and that same crowd that saw that was going to betray Jesus later and turn away from him and disregard him. They're going to have to figure out as a crowd how to pretend that never happened, because that must not have been, it was just crazy weather, it just didn't, who knows, heaven sort of talking, it kind of sounded like a voice, it wasn't really a voice. Together they were going to have to pretend like that never happened. But Peter, James, and John, as a small group of guys, we're going to stand there and say, we can't deny this with one another. Down the road, when we talk about the power of God, we're going to remember that his face was shiny today. And we all saw it. Because later the crowds are going to leave and Jesus won't be with us in bodily form, but in spirit. So let's make sure we remember this together. Then Matthew 26, 36-38. This is the last time that Jesus brings just Peter, James, and John. It says, then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. So again, Just like with the little girl, Jairus' daughter, he brings his disciples, says, come on, we're going to go pray. Okay, this is good. You stop there, disciples. Peter, James, John, you come a little closer. I need you to taste this. I need you to experience this together. I need you to recognize me in the weight of this situation. I need you to learn to fight through this. By the way, they failed in that situation. So it's not like God was like, oh, I just need my powerhouses here. Jesus was his powerhouse. But he pulls these guys together saying there's something good about you experiencing this together, because together you're going to have to call each other to the strength that you're seeing right now in me. Worship team, you can come on and join me. Jesus recognized the crowd was coming. He knew the momentum was about to shift, that people were going to start following him. Jesus had, you got to imagine that. When he fed the 5,000, probably closer to 12, 13, 14, or 15,000 people were on that hillside. That's just the crowd that was following him that day. Jesus had a crowd of up to 15,000 following him wherever he went. That's a crowd. That's momentum. That's a movement. I'd call that revival, you know? But that same crowd, by the time he died, was all gone. They were gone within a couple of years. They're just gone. No one's hardly there. Everyone's turned on him. They're either gone or they've actually turned on him. They've seen the miracles. They've seen the moving. They've seen the power. They've seen the life. They've heard the teaching. All of that. And the crowd disperses and is gone. So what's the difference here is relationship. Jesus said, no, but you guys, we're going to sit and talk until you get this. We're going to sit and talk until you understand it together. You're going to learn it together. You're going to dream of it together. You're going to believe it together. You're going to walk this out together, because the crowd is exciting and it's fun and it's moving and it speaks of momentum and it's impressive. We like looking at it. We like seeing what it's doing. But just because it's impressive doesn't mean it's investing itself. I need you guys to invest yourselves in one another. People can come and go in the crowd. I want a group of you that can't come and go so easily, that can't walk in and walk out of faith, walk in and walk out of these momentous occasions. I need some of you who are going to walk together and stay together and call each other to account and believe for the greater things. There's people who have seen miracles, people who have seen the moving of God, people who have seen the power of Jesus, people who have seen him, but people who all will forget without each other. And so we as a church really value doing what Jesus did here and putting people in small groups. I think you need it. I think I need it. Because we forget. We lose focus. And we get distracted. And I want you to have people who not just on Sunday, but on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday are with you and say, no. Come on, you remember what God's doing in your life. Remember what you're called to. You remember what he spoke to you that day. Don't leave that behind. No. Taking that job is giving up the calling that you know you have in your life. Don't do it. No. You said you were going to act this way with your family. No, you said you were going to give up this thing with your family. A crowd is not going to do that to you. Your pastor can't even do that to you. I can't call all of you and say, hey, listen, you said you were going to do this and you're not doing it. Your small group can. And Jesus knew that it was needed, knew that it was necessary. And he called Peter, James, and John, said, this is going to be what you guys do for one another, and you're going to need it, because down the road you're going to be standing in front of the law of the land, and they're going to be saying, shut your mouth about Jesus Christ, don't talk about him anymore, and you together will say, we cannot help speak about what we have seen and heard. We've seen it, we can't deny it, we're together in this, so one way or another, we're just unable to not speak about it because we have seen it together. And even though an entire crowd of people, up to 15,000 at a time, had seen it and they all left, we together sat and hashed it out and debriefed it and talked it through and figured out what it looked like for our lives. And then because of that, we can't deny it. So it happened. So we're there. This is what a small group does. This is what relationships do that the crowd can't do for you. So we want everyone in a small group. So I'm going to invite my good friend, my brother-in-law, Matt Morrison, to come on up. He's somewhere in here. There he is. And Matt, can you get that microphone from Pastor Allen there? Matt has, we're still going to have the nice keys behind us, but this is the more logistical piece of getting yourself in a small group, because we are working hard. Matt has been working very hard. Our communication team has been working very hard on creating a space and creating an ability for you to easily get yourself signed up for a small group so that our whole church doesn't have to be just a crowd. I don't want to lose the crowd, but I don't want to not have the excitement and the momentum and the oppressiveness of crowd. But I don't want to have the crowd without the groups and without the growth that happens in them. So Matt, tell us what we need to do.
All right, so first of all, I just want to say this is a topic that I'm excited to be part of this day, Small Group Sunday, and just to speak from my personal experience. But prior to coming to the Comox Valley, my wife and I lived in Vancouver. We were part of a large church, and it became obvious so fast to us that if we just showed up every Sunday, that we were not getting that complete experience, that we were missing something, that we could just easily be lost in that crowd. And so we quickly got involved in a small group, and it was incredible to watch how much that transformed that experience. That now when I think back to that community, I think back to the church was a good experience, but it was that small group that those relationships were formed, that people knew us, that we're now missed by people, and we miss people in that church because of those relationships that we formed. And so, yeah, just being part of this means a lot to me, just because as we grow, without a doubt, that's where we're going to get seen. And so we've actually, my wife and I have had the chance this past year to lead a small group in Northgate, and we had a number of families that joined our group that were kind of, we all had come sometime in that past year, but it was amazing to watch how those families have connected in now, because we joined together in that. You just feel more invested. You feel like you're part of something. You're part of community, and like Evan's been talking about, you know each other more than you would just by showing up on Sunday. So yeah, as Evan said, we want to talk about a couple of ways. So as part of the communications team, our job is to make your life easier in connecting at Northgate. And so as part of today, what we wanted to do is give you a couple of really simple ways to do. So first of all, you've all heard about thisweek.ngate.ca, as we've talked about a way to kind of keep up to date weekly. We've actually transformed that today for Small Group Sunday, where if you pull that up on your phone, you'll see every single small group that we're offering in the church. And so you can kind of go through and you see who's leading it, what they're leading, what the category is, when they meet, and whether or not it might be a good fit for you to join. So that's something you could do right now or anytime later today. But if you're feeling like the phone's not the right option, on the next slide you'll see that our team is going to have iPads out on the tables in the lobby, and there's a bunch of leaders that are going to be out there to chat with you. They'll help you get signed up if you don't want to do it through the phone. So that's another good option. And then finally, we're also going to have it right through the website. If you go to Connect and then Small Groups there, you'll have the same ability to connect and sign up for a team there. So a couple of ways to make it really simple. So hopefully that helps you out.
Okay, so Matt, well, if you go on this week, I'm on thisweek.ngate.ca right now. You're allowed to do this in church, by the way, in case you were wondering. And because we value relationship this much, and so right away I look on, I can see the leader of a group, and also sort of what just a little bit about what's happening at their group, where and when they meet, and then I can click on sign up right there. Good, I see one phone up there. Maybe there's more popping out. I hope. Here, show me your phone if you're holding your phone. Anyone? Yeah.
There we
go.
go.
Normally, next time I do that, you better be careful about showing me, because I might be preaching, and I don't want you to show it to me, but. There it is. If you pull it out, we'd love for you to get signed up. We really, 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 really value this for you. We really want you to have this. We want you to have relationship. One of the number one reasons people leave church is because they feel like, I just didn't feel like anyone connected with me. And usually what they mean is, I feel like the pastor didn't connect with me and things. I want you to know, and this is just with sincerity of heart, as our church grows, I have less ability to connect with every person in this place. And our staff even has less ability to connect with every person in this place. Our youth ministry is going to get large enough and is large enough that our youth pastor doesn't have the ability to connect with every person even in youth group. And so that just starts to happen, and this is why we create things like this, where we say we want you to feel like you've got people. We want you to feel like the church is around you, because the church isn't the pastor, the church is the people moving with Jesus. Amen? And so since we're that, we get to walk with one another. And I've seen some really amazing things. Matt, do you have more to say, by the way? Okay, we have some. You can stay. You can stay. I'm just saying. Okay, I'll see you later. Sometimes I just get going. Thanks, Matt. Come on. I want to tell you one quick story then. There was a small group in the church that I was a part of before, and they started developing. They were actually all from India. They came to Canada, and they just started developing a small group. They all were part of the celebration and part of the crowd, but then they all also started a small group. And I went to that small group. It was life-giving. It was powerful. It had great food. Hallelujah. And it was awesome being part of that. But then one of the moms in that group got sick. She got cancer. And she had a bout with cancer for about 6 months and then died. But in those 6 months, she always had someone beside her bed. And her family, she had young kids. Her family couldn't be the ones who were doing that all the time. Her husband couldn't be the one who was doing that all the time. Though the pastors did get there, they couldn't be there constantly. But she never didn't have someone beside her bed. Why? Because her small group set up a schedule and said, we are going to make sure she's never alone. It was her small group. It can't be all of us that do it, but it can be some of you that do it for one another. And so we need small group. Maybe you say, I don't need it right now. I'm not in need right now. Well, it's too late once you do need it. Later on, you go, I want to try to rally up a small group. Why? Because I'm a really needy person and now I'm really broken and I need someone to fix me. Like, okay, that's a hard person to, no problem. I'll just jump in. But if your friend says that to you, if someone's in relationship and they say that to you and say, I'm just really breaking, you're like, well, I'm here until you're better, right? And so start building relationships while you're healthy. And if you're not feeling healthy, jump in a small group anyways and allow yourself to grow with other people. Jesus built it this way. So he was determining that the crowd wasn't enough for your faith to grow to the point where it will carry you and sustain you when the crowd leaves. And so small group is the answer. I want you to have it. Matt has been working hard at creating that environment and the ability for you to do that. And so I'm just basically at this point just making sure you have enough time. If you haven't done it yet, you should just do it. thisweek.ngate.ca. It's going to take us some time. We haven't done this before, so there's going to be some follow-up this week and some figuring out and some making room and some adding on of small groups and stuff like that. We're going to have to figure it out, but we really, really want you to sign up for a small group, okay? You two are in. Okay. I know sometimes this doesn't feel exciting. Like, this doesn't matter. What, can't you just do your song and dance and make us laugh and let us go home? No, that's what the crowd says. The crowd says that, yeah. And I'll do that for you sometimes. I'll make more bald jokes sometimes than I do other times. But sometimes we need to get to the point where we're recognizing there is a need in our church, there's a need in this community that me getting up and preaching and these guys getting up and playing and us making you a good coffee in the lobby, there's a need that some of us are going to have that those things can't fulfill. And though it's exciting and sometimes impressive and exciting to see, what we want to see you doing is getting yourself involved in relationship that's sustaining the excitement that's happening amongst the crowd and carrying you when it's not the crowd any longer, when you're on your own, when you're battling something, when you're being overwhelmed by something. We want you to have people to turn to, and so we want you in a small group. So do that. Sign up for a small group. Get yourself engaged. Get yourself invested in this community, and let's grow together. Next week we're going to carry on, continue looking at what Jesus did with the crowd, how he behaved with the crowd, and how he taught the crowd specifically. And so we'd love to have you come back. We're so glad you're part of Northgate today. If you didn't get to sign up here, you don't have a phone, you can sign up in the lobby. One way or another, have an incredible week. We love you. We will see you next week. You should bring someone back and enjoy what God is doing here. Amen? Let's go. Have a good week.
Let's stand and sing it out today. You